gentlemen. Welcome back to Bowls Breakdown Podcast with Mike and Matthew. And today, again, I'm saying we are delighted, and we are really delighted today to welcome John Wilson from, am I saying it right, John, if I say Parab?
You would be right in saying that.
Okay, thank you, John. And thanks for spending your time and coming and speaking to us today. John, obviously lots going on with Parab, and we've got a bit of a script that we're going to go through. Before we start and move on into the Parab bowls, I want to know where bowls started for you, really.
Oh, for me, for my personal game? Yeah, I started playing, I played football for a long time, Mike, and I regret not having taken up bowls much earlier in life. But I played football, and through football I get to know friends who played bowls at a local park in Mansfield in Swansea. Right. And they invited me to come and have a roll-up, and I did. After the first roll-up, like most other people who played similar sport in golf, I was bitten by it, and I wanted more.
Yeah.
I joined for a season with the Mansfield Club. From that point on, I met up with the players from Old Landorians Club, you may remember, from Swansea, and they invited me to go and join their team. They were a far more competitive side, and I've always had that competitive spirit within me, and I wanted to achieve more in bowls. And I went to play with them, and some people criticise that I wouldn't go to Old Landorians, full of stars, you know, and you'll never get a game. I played for 10 years, never dropped once, and a lot of success in the interim.
And that's great. So can I ask, John, obviously we're mature in an age compared to the youngster that's sitting on the table. When was this? When did this all happen for you? When you finished football?
I carried on playing football. I finished football at the age of 42.
Right, okay.
And then I decided, I'm too many knocks. It took a lot longer to heal from, Mike. And time to call it a day and focus on the bowls. And that was 1989. Okay. Where I really got into bowls at that point. I just thought it was an enjoyable experience, you know. It compensated for team sports, not playing football, and I found it just as good and just as competitive.
Yeah, if people don't play, you don't realise how competitive it can be today.
And scrappy and bowls.
yeah, it's more challenging. It's your tackles. But I had the pleasure of playing with some greats of the game, you know. I learned to play the game, in my opinion, the right way, as I try to now coach our players to play. Okay. Yeah, like amongst UK champions and world champion Terry Sullivan.
Yeah,
it's probably one of the best skips I've ever played with.
Right.
He's a great guy.
Obviously, you've got a love for developing bowlers. Yeah.
Yes.
And you've started with the Para bowls. How did that all come about?
Right.
How did that happen?
One of the players from Old Landorians, John Glover, great bowler in his own right, had moved to Parkadre in Llanelli. It's a long story, I keep it as short as I can, but he moved to Parkadre.
We've got all the time in the world.
Great. And he gave me a call one day and said, look, I'm at a club in Llanelli, Parkadre. They're struggling for players and the club needs rebuilding. Do you fancy giving it a go? And I had a bit of a reputation for doing that in football. I played at a higher level football and always went down to develop a club, or to help develop a club. I did that, went to Parkadre, great bunch of lads in Llanelli, thoroughly enjoyed it. The Greens in Commonwealth were superior at that time to the Greens in Swansea. And in the first season, John and I together there attracted a few more players from the Swansea area to come and play. We were languishing at the base of the table when I arrived, and in the first season, I think we finished about third. The second season, we went through unbeaten in the Premier Division. So it was a great success story for them, and I love Carmarthenshire. And although I live in Swansea, I still choose to play in Carmarthenshire.
So where do you play now currently?
I'm playing at Llanelli Old Road.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I lived in Llanelli for 10 years or so I know Llanelli quite well.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's how it all started with the Paralympics, and where's it gone from there? Just go through the story, how that's all developed through.
Well, that move to Llanelli kicked it off for me, you know, playing at Llanelli League. It's just during that period, I played against a gentleman, Mr. Gilbert Miles, who played for Pontedillis. He'd lost one eye, and his eyesight was poor in the other. And he asked me, after I got to know him through playing against him, you know, would I get involved with bowls with Pontedillis? And I did. And that's where it started, and that was about 1997, 1998 onward. Well, my involvement only included one vision impaired person then, which was Gilly.
Right.
And from that point on, I just developed a sense of how to coach, and they'd always put them on my rink, so I was familiar with what's called a clock system, a string down the centre, fending off opposition queries, etc. And when I was playing one day, I was aware he was a member of a group that played in Swansea, and they were the West Glamorgan Blind Bowls Club. And I was down there having a roll-up one day because I played bowls at Swansea Stadium. And I happened to look across. There were a group of about 6 or 7 people playing, and they were all, I could recognise them immediately, they were all vision impaired. And I just popped along, sat behind them on the rink, I said, would you like a hand? Because they were trying to sort themselves out to pick the right bowls up for them to use, etc. And from that point on, I've been involved.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was around 2010, I think.
Okay. So we've done 10, 20, trying to work out down to 15 years ago.
15 years from my involvement, but 27 years overall, but 15 years from my involvement to get into the position of going on to greener coaching.
Okay. So what is your role, your current role? What's your title in this?
Right, in this particular field, there's several. I was explaining to Matthew earlier on. I held several positions.
A few.
Yeah, Parab's coordinator for Wales. I'll explain the Para bit in a moment. Team manager for the physically disabled, Disability Bowlers Wales, and team manager for the Welsh Association of Vision Impaired Bowlers. And for this season and onwards, I'm the president of Carmarthen County and the chairman of Terminologies Indoor Bowls Club. Oh. So it's got a variety of work, and one of the reasons I took on the other 2 positions are for future promotion and inclusion for para bowlers throughout Wales.
Well, you haven't got much more time, have you? You've got a very understanding wife, I reckon.
You're perfectly right. My wife Margaret is amazing. Yeah. She really is. Without her support and being used to me being away, I'd never ever be able to be doing what I'm doing. And she's been great. And for the first time in 53-year marriage, 2 seasons ago, she decided to start bowling. Wow. So I do at least get 2 sessions a week where I go to play bowls with my wife, and she's very, very good at it.
She beat you regularly?
She claims to. Yeah, I'll accept that she beats me, yeah.
And I know you talk about your wife. I'm going to drop in very quickly because obviously you posted quite recently you had the pleasure of playing in a rink with your son and your grandson.
How proud am I, yeah, he's 9 years of age, little Jackson. Another little sportsman. Anything he turns his hand to, he's good at. He's a cracking little footballer, and he's a great little rugby player and a cricketer.
And it makes life easier if you've got a family who's involved in the sport, John, doesn't it? We've set up this little podcast. It's a family-run thing. This was my dining room, which is now a podcast room, and you've got to have an understanding wife to have all these.
We would never be able to do it. There was a wardrobe, three-door wardrobe, every bit of it full of kit from shirts I've always ever had.
Yeah. So thanks out to the families, without them we wouldn't be able to do the things we like.
Let's obviously jump back. So obviously you do both para bowls, visually impaired bowls, physically disabled. Is obviously they're slightly separate with.
We combine them.
Okay.
We do combine them, but when it comes to some tournaments, they play within their own disciplines. Mm-hmm. And when I refer to para bowls, that refers to every group within the para bowls, and that's vision impaired and physically disabled.
Okay.
The term they use para, a lot of people mistake it for being paraplegic, in relation to people maybe wheelchair bound, etc. Wheelchair users, I should say. But it's not. They call it para bowls because it introduced those mixed abilities into the Commonwealth Games. They run parallel with the mainstream sports, and that's where the para comes from, parallel.
Right. It's interesting to know, people, and some of these terminologies. Yeah, people are sometimes frightened to use these terminologies because they think they get it wrong and then they offend. And I don't think people intentionally do that.
They don't.
I think it's just, and then they reluctantly, they don't discuss them, and that's the problem. We want people, even if they don't know the terminologies, we want people to discuss.
Just ask the question.
Yeah, just ask the question, and
Don't be afraid of having a vision impaired or disabled person, at your club. On a personal level, I start from a premise. I don't see disability. I've said this many, many times. I just don't see. I don't see vision impaired people. I don't see disabled people. All I see are humans, people, basically. If you start from that premise, and treat them as humans. Because a lot of people make a mistake with perhaps someone is a wheelchair user and you'd have somebody maybe pushing them. They will talk to the person pushing them and say questions like, oh, how long has she been playing? You know, they lost their mobility, not their brains.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
We first met actually indoor last year. I don't know if you remember the Para Commonwealth team were preparing for something, and we played indoor against the thing. And I think Chris from Cleley was
Chris Briggs.
He's a lovely guy, and he's gone through some complications in his life with his.
Absolutely, he's a stroke survivor.
And I really enjoyed it. And like you know, for the first time probably, I seen people who were just bowlers. Yeah. They were people who got look different. Yeah, because of the injuries or whatever they are, but they're just human beings, and they were some really, really good bowlers. We're going to go on to some success stories later on in this.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. You asked me about an insight of where I started from in bowls, and going back to sort of 1998, so on. When I was involved in the group, there was only one person from Swansea area in particular who was playing mainstream bowls, and that was the person with me, Mr. Gilbert Miles, ex-Swansea fullback, you know.
Okay.
And in Cardiff you had Alan Jones, and I think that was almost it, playing mainstream bowls. And I thought, this isn't good enough, because you see these groups of people playing on an end rink, no one talking to them, sorting themselves out on their own. That has changed, I have to say, now over the years. It's absolutely amazing that the transition for that has changed. And I thought, why are they just accepting that they're going and just chucking a ball up there and it can go anywhere? And I started going on coaching them and having different expectations, giving them challenges, and making the game more interesting, more competitive for them.
Yeah.
And like I said, at that time, there's only one person playing mainstream bowls. Now within the squad, every single person is playing for a club somewhere in Wales.
And that's brilliant.
It's rewarding, you know.
The work you're doing, John, is phenomenal, to be fair. And we're going to talk again, you know, as we go through. But there's lots for us to bring up.
There's so much to obviously. So I'm going to jump back a little bit. Obviously, am I correct in saying when it comes to para bowls, there is different divisions?
Different divisions within each discipline? Yeah. And if we start with the VIs, vision impaired persons, there's 4 classifications.
That's the word I'm looking for, classification.
And they range from B1 to B4. And just to give you a range of each end of the spectrum there, a B1 player is completely blind. They don't see anything. They live life in darkness, you know, and I coached a number of those B1 players. And then you have B4 on the other end of the spectrum. That's the best of the persons who have suffered sight loss. And to give an example of it, they can see like a rink marker at the end of the rink of B4, the acuity. But that is like looking through a straw. So once they deliver a bowl, they have no peripheral vision.
Okay.
Yeah, and then there are others who don't have central vision, and they only have the peripheral a little bit, so 20 degrees peripheral vision, you know. So that's where they are with them. Now, the physically disabled group, that's a little bit different in terms of classification, because the vision impaired are done by a qualified optometrist. They go through what's called a logmark test, and they come out with a number of readings, and we allocate them based on those professional readings, the classification for the individual. With the physically disabled, it's a 2-stage classification. You have a medical, where the classifying officer will examine the medical records, medication, history. That is given a set of marks. And then you have a practical session where they're witnessed playing on the green. And then they arrive at classification between B6 and B8. And 6 is, to say, the least mobile of them all. You know, perhaps wheelchair users, above the knee amputees.
Yeah.
And then we have the 8s, which you mentioned earlier on, gentlemen, Chris Briggs.
Yeah.
Chris is a B8 currently.
Okay.
And that's what they are then.
Yeah, I was going to ask that, because obviously, you know, in a way, how to classify where a person would fit into each category. But I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's always something that obviously, you know, as a sportsman, you can be very competitive in ways, and obviously if there's you know, obviously you've got a professional way of categorizing each person.
Absolutely, it's completely independent.
Intellectual
learning disability. They're neurodiverse individuals.
Right, okay.
I've involved them with our para group, because I felt that they were left to one side, and I thought there was much more for them to come, And they're run in the main in 2 locations currently. There's another one maybe on the way very soon. But they run Cardiff Chameleons, which is run by Mr. Barry Jenkins, been involved in them for a while. And then you've got the Milford Haven group who play in the Meads at the Leisure Centre, and it's Steve Whitmore and a number of others involved there.
Okay. When you say intellectual, was it intellectual disability?
Intellectual learning disability.
Learning disability.
Yeah.
What does that cover? What sort of spectrum is that within?
It could be many, Mike. It could be from autism to Down syndrome.
And that's where I was going to go, because we've just run a little schools project, and we had a young lad who was only 8.
Yeah.
He's come along, and he's obviously got some intellectual disability, learning disability there. And he just got so excited when he was born. For the first time ever, he's been able to play a sport with all his peers from school, and the joy in his face was just tremendous.
It's amazing. I think that's a reward for it.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely
brilliant. I think, we talked a lot about the inclusivity of sports and stuff, especially bowls. I think bowls is probably one of those sports you can actually create an inclusiveness environment for everyone.
Yeah.
There's something for everyone in bowls, and whether you do have vision impairment or any sort of learning disability, it doesn't matter when it comes to bowls. You can play bowls.
You can.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to highlight one individual, because it was my first experience of watching the person visually impaired, which was Julie.
Right.
Julie
Thomas.
Yeah, Julie. She practiced, as we discussed. She comes out of the gym and she was out doing the practice.
Yes.
And it's the first time I've ever experienced that. To watch. And it was just mind-blowing. Phenomenal how she manages the ball with that string.
She doesn't miss.
And she's just she's getting up so close to them. And I know you've got quite a personal contact with you, because I know from previous conversation, you were the first coach of Coach Julie.
Yes.
But it just blew my mind. It blew my mind how good she is as a bowler. And then over the years that we've been playing now, and I met Julie I saw her bowl first time. There's a gentleman who's amputee from, I think it's Harlequins.
Oh, Paul Brown.
Yeah,
yes.
Paul.
Good player.
And again, just a phenomenal player.
Yes. And
then we played you last year in the indoor, and it was just blown away by everybody, just how good they are,
yes.
And it's nice to see that is developing, And I suppose from something that happened 15, 20 odd years ago, you're now taking part in the Commonwealth Games.
Oh, it's absolutely fantastic. I remember our first challenge was to be able to get ourselves in a position to win the Commonwealth Games. And that could only be done through the support of Disability Sport Wales.
Yeah.
I was very, very fortunate. They're a great team, like a family. John Morgan was the Chief Executive Officer, and a gentleman by the name of Gerwin Owen, an amazing guy, absolutely incredible man.
Yeah, and it's just so nice now to see that, lots of sports are becoming more inclusive, aren't they?
Oh,
the Olympics now. Following the Olympics, we always have the Paralympics that follow it. So things are developing and moving on in this world, aren't they?
I think you're right, Mike. And when you get this involvement in sport, then you change from looking at disability to witness someone's real ability. So I don't usually like using the term disability, other than in traditional names. But I much prefer to focus on people's abilities. And when you quite rightly say, when you see them in the Paralympics and when you see them playing in our home nations, World Championships, European Championships, they're just bowlers, they're just people.
Okay, get back. We've gone off a bit.
Before we obviously, we talked about, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier on. Give us an insight to obviously, the vision impaired, where they use the string and the what you call the clock system.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Can you give us a little bit of insight on how that works for the individual? Because I'm very interested. Because obviously we hear it with Julie when she comes to practice is, you're 3 o'clock and this, and I'm interested to see how that works when it comes to.
It's a great reason for doing it, and I think the basics you have to remember is that with vision impaired persons, they work from muscle memory and from memory of finishing location of the balls on the green. So for the starting bit, the line down the centre of the green, string, thin breakable string, is just to indicate that, the centre. And from that point, we coach them where to place their feet and angle the stand. So stance is there. And when you deliver a bowl, the importance is with a director, because we have a number of directors, and the director will tell the player then where the bowl is finished. So if you're a yard to the left of the jack high, that would be 1 yard, 9 o'clock. So you're looking at a clock face effectively up the green. 6 o'clock being nearest to you, 12 o'clock furthest, 3 o'clock to your right at 90 degrees, and 9 o'clock 90 degrees to the left. And then the divisions in between.
Okay.
And it's incredible how they memorise where the balls are, and not just their own balls. When they play in a singles game with 4 balls, they actually remember where their opponent's balls are.
Wow.
I can barely see where my opponent's balls are when I'm playing, but
Do you know what? I play third and I leave the head, and by the time I've got down to the bottom, I've forgotten what it looked like.
No, some of them are incredible. Jack Boyd, for instance, from Milford Haven, and he is remarkable. His memory for remembering, he's totally blank. The location of the balls and where they finish. Very impressive.
Yeah, it is. I can't remember the time I got down to the bottom.
Yeah.
And in terms of obviously they'll have to know how far they throw the jack as well. Is there like markings on the string for yardages and stuff?
On some strings there are. They're not totally necessary, but that's where the director at the far end comes into play.
Yeah.
Because they have to work to precision. You can't stand at the tee and guess that the jack is 5 yards up the green. You have to pace it out. Get used to pacing almost an exact yard, and then call out the jack distance. The jack is at 30.
I mean, you've really sparked my interest, because the tactics in bowls can be quite a lot in it.
Yeah.
So do you find that they would set the mat at a certain distance, or do they vary the mat length because of that?
I personally do.
Right.
As you know, because bowls are a very tactical game.
It is indeed.
Yeah, we don't introduce that too much in the beginning of their career, but certainly when they develop and progress, yes, it is included. And that's down to someone like me. If I'm directing, I not only watch and look at the strengths and weaknesses of our players on a green, I'm always observing the strengths and weaknesses of their opponent. And if I see someone who's favouring a forehand, I'll put our player on forehand, just to disrupt their game and force them onto the backhand if necessary, that kind of thing. But when it comes to casting a jack, some of the VI players are better casting the jack than any mainstream bowler I've ever played with.
It's all about feel.
Muscle memory.
It's all about feel,
Yeah.
I'm I say ex-golfer, but I still play now and again, but it's the same principle, and I think that's muscle memory played a lot of part in my early bowls career. Being a golfer, a lot of that is muscle memory, learning where to put things and how things should feel. And I take a lot of that muscle memory into my bowls. And it is such a hard skill to do. And it's so impressive when you see, people who are visually impaired or even para bowlers, that they do it so consistently. And I'm sitting there thinking, I wish I was that consistent, because
it's amazing. Certainly with the vision impaired persons, it's to say they're robotic, but it's deliberately robotic.
Yeah.
I've got a system, and I won't tell you on air.
Yeah, no,
because of the success of Wales, and it arisen quickly. It's just because of the technique developed.
Okay.
I'll have to learn that after the podcast.
Yeah, it is. It's very, very simple. But I found myself in position in international competitions when the coaches are sat behind us looking to see if they can see what I do. When I speak to a player, I speak very quietly. I get close to the player and I speak to them quietly to advise them what I'm doing and what they're doing on the mat. So people can't see it really, but I think they've twigged now. Some of them have twigged and they realised it's a different way.
Matthew was coached by an international golfer, David Llywelyn.
Oh, I know.
When the World Cup with him was a great, as you would think.
One of my favourite human beings ever.
And he had a thing with golf. He said, golf is a game, it's a boring game. And the more boring it is, the better you're playing.
Yeah.
And he's right in a lot of sports, isn't it? Because if you're playing really well, it's just boring. because you just did it all the time.
Just draw to the jack. And
just draw to the jack.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with anything. If the better you are at the game, the more boring the game becomes.
It's also consistency, Mike. You know.
You know, it's like, you know, we say in golf, you hit the same shot over and over again. You know, and that's all you're doing. You're just doing the same thing over and over again. Yeah, okay, the jack changes and stuff, but you're still doing that every end. You're doing the same shot over and over, and that's what that boring kind of thing.
And we talk about golf a lot in the podcast because it's a sport that I've been involved with Matthew for a long time. But it's the same with all sports. Isn't it? If you're a football team, if you're just passing the ball and you're successful, and it becomes boring in the end because you're doing it right.
Absolutely.
It becomes hard when you're not doing it right and you're really trying to work and trying to fight to get on some sort of form, you know.
Yeah,
so
absolutely, and through my coaching experience, the easiest people to teach how to play golf are golfers.
Yeah,
it's the same touch, the same reading on green. It's
it's angles and just for.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like I always said to the putting side of it, right, is very feel based. You got to read kind of your green and stuff, and it's the same with bowls. You know, every green got a little different bend to it, a different way the ball's going to react to it, and kind of take that skill quite easily into it. But and then you just got to actually do it, which is the hard part. But yeah, it's one of those.
Once they achieve that kind of status, when they've achieved that consistency regularly, then what I tend to work on with them is like the composure and temperament.
Yeah. It's so important.
And the concentration, levels of concentration are very important.
We come on more to that in a second. I want to come back to a second. Commonwealth Games.
Yes.
So we can talk. I'm going to have to structure it a bit because we could talk. I could talk all day with you today about your experiences. Commonwealth Games experiences, John. How many Commonwealth Games have you been to now?
I've been to 3.
Okay. Yeah. And what were they different? Give me experience of
very, very different. The first one is when I set out to speak with John Morgan, Gerwin Owen, and a lady by the name of Claire Ben, and convinced them that we were worth a shot for the Commonwealth Games, and they all actively supported us. And we quickly put our governance in order, and then there was an 8 Nations Test series at Kelvin Grove in Glasgow, and I knew we were going there. And we had to finish in the top 3 to qualify to get a place in the Commonwealth Games. Yeah. And that we did. We qualified. I was absolutely delighted. And then, of course, the journey begins. And you work in tandem with the men's team and the ladies' team. At the time, I think it was Alan Hodges, I think, in Glasgow, first time round, and Hazel Wilson, the ladies' team manager. We worked well together. You know, it was great. And that started the road to inclusion for me. It was the exposure.
So was that first game in Scotland?
That was in Scotland,
right, okay.
Glasgow, Kelvin Grove in 2014.
Right.
And that was an amazing experience. We didn't qualify for the latter stage and we missed out on shot difference, which is always disappointing, isn't it? And so we came away from there. And then we had to fight for a position again then for our next games, 2018 and the Gold Coast.
Right.
That we managed to qualify again. And it was great. It was very rewarding, you know. We missed out on the gold medal playoff by 1 shot, but we succeeded in the bronze playoff and won the bronze medal.
Can you remember the team for that and who won then?
At that time, it was, Gilbert Miles and Julie Thomas. And the Parab bowlers did really well, but they again missed out on shot difference and qualification.
Okay. So obviously development in it, and when you're looking at any sport, you've got to show some sort of development. And you went obviously from Scotland to the Gold Coast was a development. And what was the one after that then? That was
Birmingham 2022.
You're not having very much luck with the travelling, and you've only been to the Gold Coast so far.
Birmingham. What an amazing place. You know, when people say it's a fantastic place to go, what's it like to go on a holiday?
Yeah,
I've never worked so hard in my life.
Yeah, if you want a holiday.
It's 7 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. You know, you just on go all day.
we went up to Falkirk indoors with just the 18th this year, you know, and everything. So it's a lovely weekend and what have you. And them youngsters who were from at 3:30 in the morning. They left to fly from Bristol. They arrived up there. They had they went straight on in the afternoon. They didn't finish till nearly 10 o'clock. They were back in at 9, didn't finish again till 9:30, 10. and they were, and he was just fair play to him. So going abroad is just the same jet lag, and you're going to put up with all of them. Because I don't think you had probably a week before you started playing, did you?
Oh, we couldn't afford that. No, we couldn't. England were out there a good week before.
Right. Okay.
Scotland as well.
Okay. So at the Birmingham.
Birmingham, great games. It was fantastic. The village there was created at Warwick University, so you still had that atmosphere of being around many other team members, I should say, of Team Wales. A brilliant experience. We were well looked after there, And the greens at Royal Lambton Spa were outstanding. We played probably about 6 months prior to it, and we played Tessiers against Australia, and we beat Australia on the greens, but the greens were different, a different animal then. But the preparation for the Commonwealth Games, they got on right.
The Parab, John, did it happen at the same time as the Commonwealth Games with other sports?
All at the same time.
So obviously, on that one, am I right in saying the Commonwealth Games captain that year was Anne Button?
Yes.
So you had a bowler
she was good.
as a team captain as well, which is even nice and special.
And she did Wales proud. She was brilliant.
Yeah. She's a lovely lady. We've had the pleasure of meeting Anne.
Big fans of Anne.
Yeah, she's lovely. Okay, so Commonwealth Games, and what did you come away with in
we better result. We're going up the ladder now. That was a silver medal on podium for us that time.
Okay, so
was that was the same year, I believe, Dan and Ross won gold.
It is. I was there. I remember it very, very well.
Yeah. His infamous. No, it wasn't Ross. It was
Jared.
Jared. Jared, I remember Jared's infamous slide on the green.
Dan Sparky in 2018. But infamous slide on and a yellow card.
Yeah. I thought he could get it.
What a great lad.
Wow.
Well, it's a great Commonwealth Games for bowls as a whole and for Wales, and obviously silver medal in the Para and gold.
Yeah, we've done quite well, and I'm hoping and expecting to do well next time. But being around those guys, Dan, Sam, and Ross, and in the past, Jonathan Thompson, they're all great guys. Rob Wheel,
and young too, young and hungry, which is always.
And people say it's a game for all men. Come take a look at the international scene.
I know.
It's not.
No, it's not.
Very much a young man.
And I go back to us playing you last year with Chris, and you and Chris were having a bit of banter, and I remember the last end that he fired a few times, and I remember you taking him aside, and saying, you can't do that, you wouldn't need to think about what you're doing, because I got him into that firing.
That's good. Yeah, it is. And you learned a lesson from it, didn't you?
Yeah, but for me, it was just a friendly match.
Yeah.
But for you, it wasn't friendly. We got to win this game.
Mike, you will realise that, because for me, every game is an assessment for me of a player and looking at weaknesses. And I saw that unnecessary drive of the weakness when you're 5 shots down and room to draw.
Yeah.
And he tried to put the jack of the ditch.
Yeah, and but I do love him to bits. He's lovely.
And he says to me now, when he's a shot, he said, I know, draw.
So,
right, before we obviously talk about the big news of Para Bowls that happened a few weeks ago, we like to break up our interview with what we like to call driving questions, although I have managed to change the name now to drawing questions. Driving questions is basically our quick fire round. No one in the past has answered it quick, so we changed the name to drawing questions. It's 5 pretty much simple questions. You just give us an answer to nothing too crazy. Some are bowls related, some are not.
Yeah.
It's just kind of just our way of breaking up the conversation, having a bit of fun, learning something different about our guests, and just moving forward from there. So, are you ready with your 5 questions?
Go for it.
Okay. So, what is the best Commonwealth Games venue you've been to?
It'd have to be Broadbeach on the Gold Coast.
Okay. Your go-to bowls partner?
That's a difficult one. I've got so many very good partners in bowls, I would have to say a very, very good friend of mine, fellow director out at the Gold Coast, Byron John.
Okay. Your favourite chocolate bar?
Picnic.
Oh, okay. Favourite position, lead, second, third, or skip?
Skip.
Yeah. And what is your most memorable bowls experience?
I've had so many, and I would have to say Birmingham 2022, and not for me. It's not my my personal experience was the reward of seeing what the players achieved, and that I would have to say was the best so far.
Good. All right, that's our driving / drawing questions done.
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously, we got in contact a couple of weeks ago. Big news out of Parab, Wales. You've now got a new home ground.
It's absolutely amazing, this is. And just to take you back a little while, is that in the past, I've always had to, I won't say beg, but request the use of greens for clubs throughout Wales. And they were great. We had Ynys Mardy in Port Talbot, Cross Hands are fantastic, Landau in Swansea, and Astragunlais. We moved around, and then I tried to, I'm raising awareness by doing this.
Mm-hmm.
So I then started deliberately taking it out a little bit further to clubs that we hadn't been to in the past, and they agreed to take us. So what we're doing is promoting inclusion, and it has worked. From that point on then, I thought England got a place to play bowls, Scotland got a place to play bowls. They got this Northfield in Ayr, and they had Leamington Spa in England.
Yeah. Before
that Worthing. We didn't have a home, nothing, nowhere we could call our own. So I spoke to a very good friend of mine, Eddie Williams. He's a former fire service colleague as well. We played together in the formations of the fire service. And I mentioned to him, we need a place, a base. And he said, what about Llandod? I said, I'd love it. The men and women are already there.
Yep.
I would love it. And I said, can you explore it for us? He said, yeah, sure. And he went away, and himself and Sam Roth, ever since, have been brilliant. They've kept in touch over the last 6 months, and last month ended with us being...
Say last month, when is
this
it?
month?
Yeah, so obviously the date is on the recording up there.
Oh, yeah.
So it was last week.
14th of May.
2 weeks ago. Was it 2 weeks ago? Just under 2 weeks.
I didn't even know what day it was. But yeah, 14th of May.
So 2 weeks ago, you announced it, you went up there. I've seen the photographs. We were going to try and come up, unfortunately we couldn't.
No.
For us.
I know, and with the signalling issues up there at the time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But we were well supported, and the new chief executive of District Sport Wales, say new, she was out in Australia with us, Fiona Reid, another fantastic person to take over from John, and her support of ours is endless. It's fantastic.
And you obviously mentioned Llandod. A big shout out to Llandod as a club and to their members for allowing this to happen, because any time this sort of happens, it takes days away where they might be able to bowl, but they're lucky they got 3 greens. So there's plenty of scope.
No issues whatsoever, with the greats like Betty Morgan and that. They're delighted to have us, Ken Price up there. It's tough to have us there, and we're eternally grateful for them giving us the facilities for use.
It's a great moment that Parab has now been put in the same home as the men's and women's Welsh bowls in the same place.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's where, as a Welsh bowler, you look at Llandod and you think that is the mecca of Welsh bowls. That's where everyone wants to get to play at.
Yes.
And it must be a proud moment for you and all you've done over the last 20 plus years, for you to be able to have that moment.
I'm absolutely delighted to have that. It's not through my own efforts as well. The players have to take credit for it, for the way they perform, and they justify that they belong. And that's all I want them to do, is to be seen to belong. And
I know you mentioned very quickly there was a certain individual as well who was really helpful from Llandod when you talked about Sam Roth.
Sam, brilliant. And congratulations to Sam on his selection for the Welsh squad.
He has been selected, and we say congratulations to everybody that's been selected, and good luck to everybody, the men and the women.
Yes.
And that's it. Llandod, any more about that? Is it what's the next? So when is the first game? When's the? Come on, John.
Lots going on. The home internationals, so the UK Para Home Championships this year in Royal Leamington Spa, but there will be preparation games at Llandod, and we always introduce an East versus West game. So anybody who's sort of left of the River Lacher is from the west, and then east, including this area, is there they play. We put 2 teams together, and it virtually balances out, surprisingly, on numbers. And we play that game up there. And also, you may or may not be aware that last year we were in the national finals, accepted by Welsh home bowls to play. Yeah. And again, that was sort of like the influence of people I'm very grateful to. Eddie was one of them. By confirming that there's capacity there, I'd make a bid. And at the time when I did, we were helped by a great friend, John Phillips, who was at the time secretary for the WBA.
Okay.
And he made inroads to it and put us in touch then, Nicky Harris as well, who is the competition secretary, and it evolved. And yes, we were invited to take our triples championship there and our pairs championships there, intellectual learning disability also.
Obviously, we were lucky enough, we tried to live stream in Radnorshire, but you were also involved in the indoor.
In the indoor, yeah.
Radnorshire in the finals, you know. So.
That's right. And again, because John Phillips took a position with the Welsh indoor, and he invited us to bring our championships there. And I thought, it's even asking, you know, they came to me. This is nice.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant.
It's one of those sports you can put, you know, you everyone on the rink together. You know, if the capacity's there, I don't see why you can't. Like,
what's the next big thing, or what's the season look like now for the rest of this year for you, John?
Right, we've got the home nations. We'll also be playing UK vision impaired singles. That's just specifically for vision impaired persons. And then there's World Championships coming up, and they were to be in Hong Kong. They're now going to be in Malaysia.
I saw they changed it, didn't they?
They changed
in preparation for the World Bowls.
Absolutely right, because Hong Kong were outdoors.
Yeah.
And now in Malaysia,
and they flipped them, haven't they? Because the 2026 World is indoor and then the 27 is outdoor or something, so they flipped them around.
They did just preparation games and test series for Commonwealth Games.
So. And when is the Commonwealth Games now?
2026.
So next year.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we've had a little chat about us trying to assist you for that in lots of different ways, haven't we? So
we're grateful for
some media sort of preparation for the players, bringing our cameras along to record them when they're having their practice and sessions. And we look again, maybe that East and West, we can do it for that, you know, where they can get used to cameras being on them.
Oh, that would be ideal.
And some microphones chucked in their face after for interviews and do some media stuff as well. But we're just grateful that we can help you in any way we can to prepare.
That'll be ideal for them, you know, given that experience. Because when you play at the Commonwealth Games, when you walk off the green, you have to go through the media stages. So you have the pens of media each side of you, and someone always pulls you to make a comment. So it would be a great experience.
Yeah, and the big one is when they're playing, you know, the first time that they got a camera, if they've played under camera pressure before, then it's nothing new then. I mean, we've done that with youngsters. We've had youngsters on the podcast, and we plan to have some more youngsters coming on quite soon now. I think the next couple we'll have some youngsters on.
Hopefully.
It's just giving them experience for when they get older. And
it's a great preparation for their future, isn't it?
Yeah, especially obviously, you know, with how good they are and how well they usually do in the Commonwealth and everything else. That at some point they're going to have this experience, whether it's here or somewhere else. It doesn't matter. They're going to have it, and you know, us as a bowls lovers, right? Forget the podcast, forget the rest of it. You know, whatever we can do to help people, we've done it. Realistically, best we can. Obviously, I know we can be busy at times, and unfortunately, we didn't make it to Llandod. But you know, when we can get that exposure up for the people and help anyone in that field, and we will.
Yeah, this is why you're so important to the game, because up until quite recently there was no real media coverage compared to what's happening in other nations, and you have changed that, and it makes it more interesting.
Well, we're trying, John.
You're doing a great job. You seriously are, and I mean that. You know.
Okay, let's keep back to your story, because this is your story really. Success stories over the years.
Mm-hmm.
You've obviously had a number, but I always find when I look back at the little things. I talked about the little boy from school the other day who was and he threw a ball, a wood, and he was in the bowls buddies, the rubber ones, and he had to throw them overhand, and he touched the jack, and he shouted, screamed his hands up, and then he started to cry because it was whatever condition he's got, you know. And his mother was saying, deep breathe on the sidelines, took deep breathe. And you know what, that stuck out to me as, I always remember that. That's one of the best moments I've had in my last 4 years or one of the best moments I've had in the last 4 years. Just seeing that young little boy being overcome with emotion because he's succeeded in something in bowls.
I agree with that.
So you would have had lots and lots
Yes.
Any that just comes to your mind? As many as you want, John. You should.
There are many, you know, and I've a personal success, you know, which I've enjoyed, but not as much as I have from what you just described. You know, that's something special, isn't it? It strikes you a little bit different.
Yeah.
And I like that, you know, but taking a player who's never played a game before to being a gold medalist at the European Championships, you know, silver medalist, Commonwealth Games, bronze medalists, and so on. It's special for them, because they realised their ambitions when they realised that you don't have to be accepted for us being stuck on the end of a rink somewhere and ignored, that there is a place for them in our sport, and there is. But several spring to mind of me, and there was one gentleman, and he's down at Dunevor Indoor. The late gentleman was down at Dunevor Indoor Bowls Club. Great guy. Hadn't been out of the house for about 3 years. He'd lost his wife, lost all confidence. He's vision impaired. He didn't know what to do with himself, and he stayed there. And I heard about it. So I asked someone, look, bring him down, try and get him here. He'll have a PA, personal assistant. Try and get him down here. We'll have a cup of tea, a little chat. And he did. He eventually came down after weeks, and then he started playing bowls. What a character he turned out to be. Honestly, he's talk about somebody coming out of their shell.
Yeah.
He was getting involved in the banter, cheering people up, and he was an amazing gentleman, he was.
And played for a long time after?
He played for a long time after, yeah.
Isn't that rewarding, though?
Oh, it's great. He said thank you to me for giving his life back.
Yeah.
And that was nice.
Yeah.
And another picture, I still have a mental picture of it now. Two gentlemen, one has sadly passed away recently. His name, the youngest player I've coached is my grandson, you know, and that was at 18 months.
Right,
He started playing. The oldest I coached is a Mr. Neville Bowen of Dunevor Indoor Bowls Club, World War II hero veteran. And he was 102 years of age.
Wow.
Absolutely incredible, remarkable gentleman. And I can recall being on the green, I went down for one of these sessions, could do a bit of coaching, and Neville, 102 years of age, is pushing Peter up the green, who was 86 years of age in a bowls buggy. And I thought, look at that. It's unbelievable, you know.
And you can't buy moments like that.
You can't, no.
They're just little things that happen.
They top all the medal ceremonies.
Yeah, they do. They do. That little boy is still in my head. It just
fantastic.
It's brilliant. There was something in my head that's gone now. You would have to think of something because I can't think.
Well, I'm just surprised how similar you two are in your different disciplines. Really, obviously, you both have a love for developing people. You obviously work a lot with youngsters. You have ever since I was a youngster playing golf, and you moved that to bowls. And obviously, you join with.
I think it may stem from our professional careers.
It may do, yeah. It may do because you were.
We were in a place where your job was to help.
Yeah. You were involved in the fire service, like you joined involved in the police service.
Yeah, but I've never lost that. You know, I got involved in training in the fire and rescue service. You know, and became head of training for operational firefighters and senior officers, and it was rewarding then to take people who had never been a firefighter before in their lives and seeing they progress their career, become station commanders, etc. You know, and I contend that in bowls, never accept people just being mundane, mediocre. Challenge them, let them achieve their own ambitions.
Yeah, and same, likewise here. So, they're great success stories, and to look back for.
That's the bit.
And it's always nice for, and I got it from my past job of being a golf professional teaching people. You kind of not only invest yourself in the sport, but you invest yourself in the individual's journey through sport as well. And no matter how little of a win someone might have, if you're part of that journey or you've been a part of that journey, you're always going to be invested moving forward. You know, I mean, God knows how many people you have coached over the last 20 plus years, but each one of those is going to be a moment for you that you could probably look back and be like, okay, this person had this, that person. And they're all going to be different, especially, some might be very successful and win silvers or golds or Commonwealths, and some might just be like, it's the first time they've ever played in a main match for a club. And they're all special in a way.
They're all very good.
And I think, just to kind of go off what you said, I think that's what bowls is about. And I think that's what this podcast is about, is exposing the sport itself rather than the individuals who have success. Yes, it's great, and we love having them on to talk about the high levels of stuff, but just having people on just to experience bowls, and that's what I think it's all about, really.
if you can hear that pitter patter of
Yes.
little feet, it's only my boy Duke.
Duke,
He's still in there. He's just it's a family home, and we've got two dogs, 2 cats, so we might appear with now and again on the podcast. So you, John, where did you see this? What's your aim for all of this? What is it, an end goal for you?
Yes, we got into the World Championships. The European Championships was a great achievement for us, and that's a relationship with the then president of European Bowls, Bob Christie. We got involved and come away as gold medalists. So we showed that we belonged in that arena as well. It was really, really good for us. And one thing I really would like to be involved in, and maybe the Welsh Bowls will be listening, Bowls will be listening, will be in the British Isles. So our Welsh Para bowlers, our disabled bowlers, intellectual and disability, and our vision impaired bowlers can compete on the same stage as the able body.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And I, I don't see why they couldn't.
I think we're moving towards that. Mike, I generally do. It's gone from the almost like you said, going cap in hand asking, can I use your green? That's completely turned around. People are now asking me to take the team to their green.
Yeah.
So our diary can be as full as anything.
Yeah, and I think there's a start there. So and again, something we've talked about in previous podcasts. The Eastern Private Greens now have allowed women to play in the same team as men.
Yes.
Now that is a start, isn't it? And what am I right in saying? What you want is your bowlers to be able to compete and people bowling on the same field.
Yeah, simple request. Equality.
Yeah. And having seen some of them bowlers out there, they're more than capable, aren't they?
As I said, they all play in I call them mainstream clubs, for lack of a better phrase. They got Harlequins, they went to Havelock, Port Talbot, the shop, Milford Haven, Tenby, Aberryon. They're all playing in very, very good clubs.
Yeah. I don't know if we've skipped over lots of things. Is there stuff that I might have missed, John, that you want to talk about? But we've there's so much to talk about. I didn't want to stay on because we would never have got through if we'd have gone down the full road of everything.
Well, obviously, I think moving forward, there's always a chance for you to come back in the future. Obviously, I'm hoping that the Commonwealth is a successful year for you guys, and we may be able to have you all back
next year.
It's next year, 2026.
Where is it?
It's going to be held in the SECC, which is Glasgow. It's indoor. It's going to be on portable rinks. And you mentioned earlier on the timings of the games, maybe late finishes because of the nature of being indoors. Yeah, limited drinks. So I would do that. But all I would say,
maybe we could get up there and
it'd be great to see you there.
Up there.
We'd great to see you there.
We see.
Yeah.
Might not have licensing to film it any at all, mind, because you know what they like, but we might be able to do some behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah. My only advice would be to clubs, you asked if there's anything I want to say, it would be don't be afraid of disability. Yeah. Don't be afraid of vision impairment. Don't be afraid of intellectual learning disability. Embrace it. Bring them in.
So what you said that, but what can clubs do? And I know from our perspective as a club, we are quite inclusive.
Yes.
Got lots of.
Now we are,
yeah. We're getting really down there to be an inclusive.
We're up to 16 under 18. That's probably more than any club.
I think we've got 13 full pay members, junior members now.
Right.
We're looking at possibly another 3 to 5 to join again after our latest. So that would take us to 16, 18 young juniors. We've had youngsters who tried last year with autism. They come down. I've spoke to you, there's a local school, Herrinston School.
Yes.
Which is a school for people with disabilities of all sorts. So again, I've asked you if you would consider, if I can get hold of them, coming down and doing some coaching with
Nick
them. Yeah, so there's lots clubs can do in there.
Yeah.
Just gotta go into
and it's not about people reaching out to clubs. It's about clubs for me. It's about clubs reaching out to people.
And they're doing, I will say that's been a transition. They're now doing that. We've got Talgarth just a couple of days ago, wanting us to go up, take a team up and play. I'll be meeting very soon with, I'm sure, Andrew Hopkins of Resolving. they're looking at this club becoming more inclusive, and they are Ogmoville, local to you. You know, they also want to have a team there.
Well, as we're on the podcast now, and we make it official, with my young junior team, and for young children to experience that playing against a para team, would you consider playing a junior team?
Of course we would.
Down at Bridgend? I think it's great for youngsters to see that people with disabilities are good bowlers.
You want to make that integration something natural.
Yeah, and early as well.
And early, you know. So we're going to have some really brand new bowlers. We'll try to give you a game. I'm going to put a couple of ringers in. I got 3 older skips. One of them is and 2 older skips as well. One a female.
It's only got a dodgy third playing down there, isn't it?
Who's that one? Oh, yeah. No, I'm not going to play. I'm just going to enjoy watching. But you know, they've done this in society, and they've school children have gone into old people's homes.
Yes.
To experience. And shit to life, and it's worked, doesn't it?
Yeah,
so for me, why don't we try a young team of youngsters, or most of our youngsters will be under the age of 16, playing with people
just to give them awareness of what life is,
and to see that even though they may be people with disabilities, they can still bowl better than anyone that they probably can.
You might have to take a time on them, John. John. Matthew usually got a couple of things.
I'm empty now.
John, I'm sincerely from my heart. Thank you so much for coming on. I know how busy you are. Thank you to your wife for putting up with you.
Margaret, isn't it?
We wish you all the success. As a team going forward, going into the Commonwealth. I know we'll be in touch, and I'm hoping soon, later, maybe after the Commonwealth Games next year, you'll come back on to share your experiences of back to Scotland. You've gone to Scotland twice, you've gone to Birmingham, and you've only gone to the Gold Coast. One thing I'm discussing is how long you're going to carry on for, but I'm sure depends on with the next. You've got to go somewhere nice.
Still a 20-year-old at heart.
There we are. Okay, John.
Thank you both for the opportunity.
It was a pleasure having you on.
Yeah, for those who are listening or watching, again, can I please ask you to subscribe and on YouTube, because that's where the materials go in. And thank you for supporting us. We're coming up to 6 months now of going live on this. So we, again in there, we'd still like you to keep supporting us and getting the message out. So thank you all, and thank you, John.
Thank you.